I'm Lauren. I've always seen myself as a dedicated wife and a loving mother, but one bright morning while I was setting up the garden for a celebration, everything changed. Who would have imagined that a simple act of assistance could stir long-buried emotions within me? How deep can our desires run, and in what ways can they alter our lives? This tale explores how a seemingly accidental touch transformed my existence. Continue reading if you're curious about the outcome of this unforeseen turn of events. I was atop a wobbly ladder wrapping lights around our patio. The sun beamed down, casting warmth and happiness over the backyard as I prepared for my daughter Casey's birthday. Organizing her party always brought me joy, even though most of the responsibilities rested on me. My husband Greg was frequently too occupied to lend a hand. The ladder beneath me wobbled slightly, but I pressed on, accustomed to these minor hassles. Suddenly, I heard a voice that startled me. "Hi, Mrs. Watson. Do you need some help?" The voice was deeper than I remembered. Turning around, I almost lost my balance. Standing before me was Michael, the son of my best friend Sarah. "Oh, Michael, thank you. I'd really appreciate that," I responded, striving to stay composed as I descended the ladder. He moved forward to stabilize it, and our hands touched briefly. That simple contact ignited an unexpected wave of emotions within me. "I just got here and saw you might need some assistance," Michael said, his eyes sparkling with mischief. "That's very kind of you," I replied, guiding him to the garden where the remaining decorations were set. Working side by side, I couldn't help but notice his presence. His confident, light movements were captivating, and every accidental touch made my heart race. "How's college treating you?" I attempted to start a casual conversation, but my tone revealed a hidden interest. "Great, Mrs. Watson. Balancing studies and social life, but it's nice to be back home. Everything feels calmer compared to campus," he answered, effortlessly smoothing a tablecloth. I laughed, though my laughter was tinged with nervousness. "I can imagine. We've all missed you. Casey often talks about you. Hopefully only good things," he added with a gentle smile, easing the growing tension between us. "Only the best," I assured him. Our eyes met briefly, and in that instant, I realized that a simple touch and a smile could rekindle feelings I had long suppressed. As evening approached, shadows lengthened across the lawn, and guests began to arrive. The party buzzed with conversations and laughter, yet the subtle spark that had ignited during the preparations remained, binding us with invisible ties amidst the crowd. When the festivities commenced, I spotted Michael among the attendees. His charisma and infectious laughter quickly drew attention. Our paths intersected again at the drinks table. Michael, now the center of attention, shared a humorous story, captivating his listeners. Spotting me, he paused and handed me a glass with a sly smile. "Mrs. Watson," he greeted, "here's the last glass of Casey's favorite drink for you." "Thank you, Michael. I think I really need this," I responded, our fingers brushing once more, and that familiar spark surged through me. I took a sip to mask my embarrassment, aware of the curious glances from nearby guests. We gradually moved to a quieter section of the garden, where dim lighting and a more private setting allowed for a more personal conversation. Our laughter and lighthearted banter continued, isolating us from the rest of the party. "Lauren," he began, addressing me by my first name for the first time, his voice sounding almost intimate. "What's life like in the suburbs? Surely it's not all parties and home renovations." I laughed, feeling unexpectedly relaxed. "Oh, it can be wild sometimes. Choosing paint colors feels like the most exciting decision of the day," I replied with a smile. He laughed too, his eyes lingering on mine longer than usual. "Sounds thrilling. Maybe you need more excitement in your life," he suggested, his voice low and inviting. Before I could respond, Casey's voice cut through the tension, her tone playful yet curious. "Looks like you've charmed the most important lady here, Michael," she exclaimed, drawing laughter from those around us. Blushing, I managed a light reply. "Casey, you know I've always had a soft spot for your family." My voice was light, but my heart raced with both excitement and fear. Michael gave me a brief, unreadable look before smiling at Casey. "Just keeping good company, Mom," he said. The entire evening blurred by with fleeting glances and whispered conversations with Michael. Each interaction sent a thrill through me that I struggled to contain. His question about needing more excitement in my life lingered in my mind, challenging the limits of my comfort zone. As the party wound down and guests began to depart, I felt a mix of relief and disappointment. The night had unveiled more than I had anticipated. Saying goodbye to Michael, our hands lingered for a moment, his touch a silent vow of unresolved emotions. "Good night, Lauren," he whispered. His voice meant only for me. "Good night, Michael," I quietly replied, feeling a blend of guilt and anticipation in my chest. After that party, I attempted to resume my normal life, but thoughts of Michael haunted me. Every time I passed by the garden or saw the lights we had hung together, our brief touches and conversations resurfaced in my memory. It was madness. How could I allow myself to be infatuated with my best friend's son? Greg remained as engrossed in his work as ever, and our interactions were limited to discussing business and caring for Casey. This routine felt stifling. One day, I decided to leave the house and visit my favorite cafe to distract myself and seek some peace. Upon entering, the doorbell chimed, blending with the aromas of freshly brewed coffee and pastries. The cafe had always been my sanctuary, a place to escape the daily grind. After ordering my usual cappuccino, I searched for a seat and unexpectedly found Michael sitting in a corner with a laptop. "Lauren, what a pleasant surprise," he exclaimed, waving me over. My heart began to race, and I felt a blush rise to my cheeks. Approaching his table, I tried to stay composed. "Hi, Michael. I didn't expect to see you here," I said, sitting across from him. "Yes, I like to change study spots. It helps me stay focused," he replied, closing his laptop and giving me his full attention. "Want to join me for a coffee?" he asked. "I already have mine, but thank you," I responded, raising my cup. A comfortable silence settled between us, and the tension from our last conversation seemed to melt away. Michael broke the silence by leaning in slightly and lowering his voice as if sharing a secret. "You know, Lauren, you're not what I expected Greg's wife to be." His words caught me off guard, and my heart skipped a beat. "I don't know," I replied thoughtfully, probably more reserved, "but you turned out to be so lively and interesting." I couldn't help but laugh, feeling flattered and a bit nervous. "I'll take that as a compliment, Michael. Thank you." Our conversation flowed effortlessly, covering favorite books, movies, personal dreams, topics I hadn't discussed even with Greg in a long time. Michael listened attentively, his responses thoughtful, making me feel understood and connected on a deeper level. When it was time to leave, Michael moved closer, his voice soft. "I really enjoyed this, Lauren. Maybe we could do it again sometime." My heart raced, and I couldn't believe my willingness to continue this strange attraction. "Yes, I'd like that too," I replied, surprised by my own honesty. We said goodbye at the cafe door, and as I walked to my car, the desire to see him again took hold of me. This unexpected meeting had drawn us into dangerous territory, and retreating seemed logical, but the allure of the unknown pulsed through me, igniting a sense of life I hadn't felt in years. Several days passed since our cafe encounter, and my emotions fluctuated between excitement and guilt. Memories of Michael and his words kept me restless. Every time I passed by the cafe, those thoughts resurfaced, making me shiver with a mix of anxiousness and conscience pangs. "This is madness," I kept telling myself, but deep down, I knew it was more than mere desire. It was a feeling I couldn't ignore despite the consequences. One rainy day, struggling with a frozen computer, I suddenly remembered Michael mentioning his talent for solving technical issues. Without thinking, I dialed his number. The phone rang, and Michael answered almost immediately, his voice warm and welcoming. "Hi, Lauren. What's up?" "Hi, Michael. I'm sorry to bother you," I began, trying to steady my voice. "I'm having some computer issues. You mentioned you're good with these things. Could you help?" "Of course, I'll be right over," he replied without hesitation. When he arrived, the tension between us was palpable. Michael sat down at the computer while I stood nearby, watching his confident movements. Our shoulders brushed accidentally, sending a familiar surge of energy through me. "Just need to tweak a few settings," he murmured, not taking his eyes off the screen. Our faces were closer than before, and looking into his eyes, I realized avoiding this attraction would be difficult. Our lips met in a gentle yet passionate kiss that quickly deepened, expressing all our suppressed emotions. As we pulled away, I could barely breathe. "We can't continue this, Michael," I whispered, my voice trembling as I realized I was saying it more to myself than to him. "I know, Lauren. I'm sorry," he replied, avoiding my gaze. We finished fixing the computer in silence, and Michael left swiftly, leaving me overwhelmed with emotions. Once the door closed behind him, I leaned against it, trying to gather my thoughts. Every touch, every kiss had left an indelible mark on my soul, and I knew this was far from over. A few weeks had passed since the party and our last encounter. I tried to keep my distance from Michael, but thoughts of him kept resurfacing. Greg remained absorbed in his work, and I felt increasingly lonely. One morning, while making breakfast, my phone rang. It was Michael. "Lauren, hi. I was thinking maybe we could meet and talk. I feel like we need to discuss what happened." My emotions were conflicted, but I agreed. "All right, Michael. Let's meet at the Lavender Garden Cafe," I suggested, hoping the familiar setting would help me stay calm. I chose a short sea green skirt and a form-fitting blouse that highlighted my figure. In the mirror, I saw a confident woman, but inside, a storm was raging. At the cafe, Michael was already waiting at a corner table. He stood as I approached, his eyes lingering on my outfit. "Lauren, you look stunning," he said. Sitting down across from him, I felt my cheeks flush. "Thank you, Michael. What did you want to talk about?" I asked, trying to steer the conversation towards a businesslike tone. "About us," he replied, not taking his eyes off me. "I can't stop thinking about you. I know it's wrong, but I want you to know how I feel." His confession was overwhelming, and my heart raced. We discussed our feelings and what to do next. I tried to maintain some distance, but each glance and word drew me closer to him. When our conversation ended, Michael suggested a walk. We left the cafe and strolled along an alley lined with blooming trees, the air scented with lavender, adding a romantic touch to our walk. At one point, he stopped and took my hand. "But I can't fight this feeling," he said, his voice trembling with emotion. I looked into his eyes, seeing sincerity and desire. Before I could think, I pulled him close and kissed him. The kiss was filled with passion and desperation, his hands wrapping around my waist, pulling me closer. I felt his fingers brush the edge of my skirt as our lips danced in an endless embrace. His breath warmed my skin, and his touch penetrated every cell of my body. The kiss grew more intense, and I lost myself in the moment. When we finally separated, our faces were close, breaths mingling. "Lauren," he whispered, his voice filled with passion and pain. "I can't hide this anymore. I want to be with you." My thoughts were tangled, but one thing was clear. I wanted to be with him too. "I do too, Michael," I whispered back, my heart filled with both joy and fear. We stood there, embracing the moment, knowing that difficult decisions awaited us. But at that instant, all that mattered was our feelings and our desire to be together. The following days blurred by as I couldn't stop thinking about Michael and our kiss. We tried to stay apart, but our attraction was too strong to ignore. Each meeting, whether accidental or intentional, intensified our desire. One day, I received a message from Michael. "Lauren, let's meet in the park by the old fountain. I need to talk to you." My heart raced, and I knew I couldn't refuse. I chose a light ivory dress that softly hugged my figure and highlighted my curves, making me feel confident and light. At the park, Michael was already waiting by the fountain. He looked tense and anxious. Our eyes met, and the spark between us reignited. "Lauren," he began, his voice trembling with emotion, "I can't hide this any longer. I think about you every day, every minute." I stepped closer, and our hands met, his touch sending an electric current through me. "Michael, I can't stop thinking about you either," I replied, feeling tears welling up but knowing we had to be cautious. "We have to be careful. This could ruin everything." He pulled me closer, our lips meeting in a hot, passionate kiss. His hands slid over my waist, gently touching my skin through the thin fabric of my dress. The kiss was filled with desperation and desire, every cell in my body responding to his touch. "Lauren, I want to be with you no matter what," he whispered, pulling away and looking into my eyes. I knew our feelings were too strong to deny. "I do too, Michael, but we need to be careful," I replied, striving to maintain some sense of reason. We spent several hours walking in the park, enjoying each other's company. We talked about our feelings, our fears, and how to handle the situation. Every word he spoke and every glance only deepened my desire to be with him. "Lauren, I don't want to lose you," he said as we stopped at a bench under a large oak tree. "Let's meet in secret until we figure out what to do next." I knew it was risky, but the thought of not seeing him anymore was unbearable. "All right, we'll be careful," I replied, my heart torn between joy and fear. Our lips met again in a passionate kiss, his hands gently touching my skin, filled with love and desire. I couldn't resist the feeling, my hands wrapping around his neck, pulling him closer as our hearts beat in unison. These secret meetings became our sanctuary. We met in secluded spots in the park, where no one could see us. Each date was filled with passion and tenderness, cherishing every moment, knowing it could end at any time. One evening, as we sat on a bench under the stars, Michael took my hand and looked into my eyes. His voice was quiet, but each word resonated deeply. "I love you too, Michael," I whispered, feeling my words filled with truth and strength. We spent the evening embracing, enjoying each other's warmth. Our kisses were gentle yet passionate, each one a declaration of love and devotion. We knew challenges lay ahead, but in that moment, all that mattered was our love and desire to be together. These secret meetings became a beacon in our dark days, finding in each other what we had long lost in our lives. Our love was forbidden, which only heightened our desire to be together, no matter the cost. Several weeks had passed since our last meeting. Each day without Michael felt like an eternity. We kept in touch through messages and calls, but the desire to see and touch him grew stronger. One day, while Greg was at work and Casey was at a friend's house, I received a message from Michael. "Lauren, I want to see you. Can I come over?" I knew it was risky, but I couldn't refuse. I replied briefly, "Yes, come." My hands trembled, and my heart raced with anticipation. I chose a short khaki skirt and a form-fitting blouse, deliberately not wearing any underwear to heighten the moment's intensity. When I heard the knock on the door, my heart skipped a beat. I opened the door to see Michael, his eyes burning with desire. We exchanged brief glances as he stepped into the house. "Lauren, you look stunning," he whispered, his voice low and husky. "Thank you, Michael. I've missed you so much," I replied, feeling my cheeks flush. We stood there, gazing at each other until the tension became unbearable. Michael moved closer and leaned in to kiss me. Our lips met in a passionate embrace, and I felt his hands wrap around my waist, pulling me closer. "Lauren, I can't wait any longer," he whispered as our lips parted for a moment. "Neither can I, Michael," I replied, my knees trembling with desire. His hands slid over my waist, carefully removing my skirt. I felt his fingers brush my skin, sending shivers through my body. As the skirt fell to the floor, his eyes widened with desire. "You're so beautiful, Lauren," he whispered, his voice trembling with passion. Michael kissed me again, his hands sliding under my blouse, gently removing it. Our bodies were close, and I felt every touch and emotion as his lips moved down my neck, leaving hot kisses that made me shiver with pleasure. "Lauren, I want to be with you," he whispered, his voice filled with sincerity and passion. "I do too, Michael," I replied, my words filled with truth and strength. We couldn't hold back any longer. Our bodies merged as I felt his hands tenderly touching my skin. He was careful and attentive, each gesture filled with love and passion. I felt every movement, every breath, filling me with bliss and happiness. Our movements grew more intense as the passion consumed us entirely. His lips found mine again and again, each kiss a confession of love. We lost ourselves in the moment, forgetting everything else but our feelings and desires. When we finally stopped, our bodies were entwined and tired but filled with happiness. I looked into his eyes and saw love and devotion there. I love you too, Michael, I replied, tears of happiness welling in my eyes. We lay there, enjoying each other's company, understanding that our love was stronger than any obstacle. This moment was ours, and we knew we would fight for our love no matter what. Several days had passed since that intimate evening with Michael. Initially, I was immersed in the euphoria of our feelings, but over time, guilt began to grow. I couldn't stop thinking about Greg and how I had betrayed his trust. Greg was very dear to me, and our family had always been my top priority. I realized I had made a huge mistake and needed to make things right. One evening, after Casey had gone to bed and Greg returned home late from work, I decided it was time for an honest conversation. I prepared a light dinner and, gathering my courage, invited him to sit down. He looked at me with surprise, but took a seat at the table. "What's going on, Lauren?" he asked, his voice full of care and concern. I took a deep breath and began to speak. "Greg, something has been wrong between us for a long time. We've grown apart, and I feel like I've lost you. I made a huge mistake. I cheated on you with Michael." His eyes widened in shock, and I saw the pain in his gaze. He remained silent, processing my words. "I know it's hard to hear, and I'm not looking for excuses, but I want you to understand that it was a moment of weakness. I still love you and want to save our family." I continued, tears streaming down my cheeks. "Why, Lauren? Why did you do it?" he asked, his voice trembling. "We grew distant from each other. I felt lonely and unneeded. You were so absorbed in work, and we had no time for each other. I made a mistake, and I'm very sorry," I replied, feeling the pain and guilt fill my heart. Greg sighed, looking at me with sadness. "I'm to blame too, Lauren. I didn't give you enough attention. I thought working hard was the best thing for our family, but in doing so, I neglected the most important thing, you." His voice was filled with regret. We sat in silence, reflecting on our words. Then Greg reached out, took my hands in his, and said, "We need to discuss our problems and try to fix everything. I don't want to lose you and our family. You mean so much to me, Lauren." I nodded, feeling relief wash over me. "I don't want to lose you either, Greg. We need to work on our relationship to restore the connection we once had," I replied, squeezing his hands. We decided to seek the help of a family counselor to address our issues and find solutions. We started spending more time together, discussing our feelings and desires. Gradually, step by step, we began to rebuild our bond. One evening, after a family session, Greg looked at me tenderly and said, "Lauren, I understand why it happened, and I forgive you. We both made mistakes, but I believe we can overcome this. I love you and want our family to be happy." Tears streamed down my cheeks, but this time they were tears of joy and hope. "I love you too, Greg. Thank you for understanding and for being willing to give us a second chance," I whispered, hugging him. Our relationship didn't become perfect overnight, but we were both determined to work on it. We began to rediscover each other, finding joy in the little things and appreciating every moment spent together. In the end, we realized that our love and family were the most important things in our lives. We overcame challenges and emerged stronger and closer. This situation taught us to value each other and avoid making the same mistakes. We knew more difficulties lay ahead, but we were ready to face them together, hand in hand, with love and support. Several months had passed since Greg and I decided to start anew. We dedicated all our efforts to rebuilding our relationship, and each day was filled with new discoveries and joys. The time we spent together helped us reconnect, making us closer than ever. After a long day at work, Greg came home with a bouquet of my favorite roses. It was a delightful surprise, and my heart filled with warmth. "Hi, honey," he said, smiling as he handed me the flowers. "Hi, Greg," I replied, accepting the bouquet and feeling tears of joy well up in my eyes. "Thank you. This is so sweet." We sat together on the couch, enjoying the quiet and the warmth of each other's presence. I leaned into him, feeling his strong arms embrace me, and realized that this moment was exactly what I had always wanted. "Lauren, I'm so glad we were able to overcome everything and find each other again," Greg said, his voice full of sincerity and love. "You mean so much to me, and I'm willing to do everything to make our family happy." "I feel the same way, Greg," I replied, looking into his eyes. These past few months have shown me how much I love you and how important our family is to me. I promise to always be there for you and support you in everything. We hugged, enjoying each other's warmth, and I felt how our mutual efforts had paid off. Our love had grown stronger, and we understood that we could handle any difficulties if we worked together. The next day, we decided to spend time together as a family. We went on a picnic to the park where I had once met Michael. Now, this place held new meaning for us, a symbol of a new chapter in our lives. Casey was thrilled about the day outdoors. We played ball, picked flowers, and enjoyed the delicious food Greg had prepared. At one point, I looked at Greg and saw him laughing and playing with Casey. I realized that this was true happiness. As the evening drew to a close, we sat together on a blanket, watching the sunset. Greg held me close, and I felt his warmth permeate every cell of my body. Lauren, I want you to know how grateful I am for everything we have. You and Casey are the most important things in my life, and I will never let us drift apart again, he said, his voice filled with determination and love. I feel the same way, Greg, I replied, feeling my heart swell with joy and gratitude. We've been through so much, but it has made us stronger. I know we can handle any challenges if we face them together. We sat there, embraced, watching the sunset and feeling our hearts beat in unison. This moment symbolized our rebirth, a new chapter in our lives filled with love and hope. We knew new challenges awaited us, but we were ready to face them together, supporting and loving each other. This story is about forgiveness, love, and the strength of family. We realized that even the darkest moments could lead to light if we were willing to fight for what we held dear. Our family had become stronger, and we were prepared for new challenges, knowing that together we could overcome anything.